What I'm saying in this op-ed is that white supremacy has always been the main focus of Republican policy. The atrocity loop is America finding new ways to justify the unthinkable. And basically what I'm doing is just stacking 3 bits of recent American history. I mean, we could go back to, Reconstruction, we could go back to the Civil War, we could go back to John Quincy Adams challenging John C. Calhoun and all that kind of stuff, back in the 1830s. But just in the 20th and 21st centuries, we've got, these series of things that just seem to keep happening here in this country, and they're all rooted in this idea of white male, arguably Christian white male superiority. And the starting one, it just kind of all fell into my place in my head yesterday afternoon. Louise and I were discussing, what are we going to write this afternoon for tomorrow morning's Daily Take, and what's in the news and what do you think about? And it suddenly hit me, what's going on with ICE right now, which we're going to get into in a little more detail a little later on. What's going on with ICE right now, taking on or going after brown people basically, and black people as well. And people of color. Occasionally they go after Asians, and the only group that has been spared so far are Native Americans, and some of them have been busted because ICE guys thought that they were Hispanics. So here we've got that going on. It's a pure racial profiling, right? Brett Kavanaugh. They're called Kavanaugh stops now because Brett Kavanaugh, the pasty white doughboy on the U.S. Supreme Court, previously accused of sexual assault, has ruled that police can stop you, including ICE, can stop you on the street and detain you even just because of the color of your skin or because of the way you speak. And I mean, this is something that's been against the law arguably since the passage of the 14th Amendment, but certainly since the passage of the Civil Rights Act in 1964. And the Supreme Court didn't, hear arguments on this and rule on this. This was one of Brett Kavanaugh's shadow rulings. This is when the 6 conservatives on the court just, bend down to kiss Donald Trump's ass no matter what it is he asks them to do. Yes, sir. May we kiss your butt again, sir? How about we shine your shoes? I can do a spit shine here, Mr. President. Getting sick always seems to happen at the very worst time. The middle of the night, weekends, the night before the holidays. Your doctor's office is closed and urgent care means long waits and big bills. That's why I keep a medical emergency kit at home. Prescription medications ready when I need them. This is not a first aid kit. It's like having urgent care and a pharmacy in your home. You get essential prescriptions like a generic Z-Pack plus antibiotics for pneumonia, strep throat, ear and sinus infections, even meds for nausea and UTIs. Just match your symptoms to the guidebook or connect with their telemedicine doctor. Take your meds early and feel better faster. Listen to what Jenny from Texas said. Quote, "We got hit by Hurricane Beryl with power out and no medical facilities open. I started on the antibiotics in my kit and quickly began feeling better." End quote. Order your kit online in minutes before you need it, and your kit is shipped right to your door. Visit urgentcarekit.com/Tom, T-H-O-M, and use the promo code TOM to save $45 off. That's urgentcarekit.com/Tom, and the promo code is TOM. The Kavanaugh stop's clearly racially motivated, clearly racially driven. And that caused me to remember the research I did, which just genuinely shocked me. When I was writing my book, this was 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I wrote a book called The Hidden History of American Healthcare. And, the subtitle is Why Sickness, Makes Some People Rich and Then Drives You to Bankruptcy, or words to that effect. I don't remember the exact subtitle, but it's very close to that. And I was trying to figure out why was it that when Teddy Roosevelt, at the turn of the 20th century, when Franklin Roosevelt during the Republican Great Depression, when Harry Truman, when John Kennedy, when Lyndon Johnson, when all of these guys proposed a national healthcare system, why it didn't happen. And why is it that when Lyndon Johnson finally got Medicare passed, there's this 20% hole in it that prevents, that you have to buy a separate insurance policy for. What was going on with that? Well, why? Why did we not join the rest of the world? I mean, Germany got a single-payer healthcare system, the first in the world, in the 1880s. Most of Europe got these things, after World War I or after World War II. And we still don't have it. A national healthcare system. We still have tens of millions of uninsured people, and it's getting worse. It's going to get a whole hell of a lot worse now that, the big, beautiful bill has gutted, not just the Obamacare subsidies, but, is also going to kick some 30, 40 million people off Medicaid. Maybe it was 15 to 20 million people. So what's the deal? Why did this happen? And I did a deep dive on this, really going back into the literature in the early 1900s, in fact, the late 1800s. In 1898, a fellow by the name of Frederick Hoffman published a book called Race Traits of the American Negro. And in that book, he argued that black people are genetically inferior to white people, and that the solution to the, quote, race problem in America was simply for white people to refuse to offer medical services to black people, and eventually they would all die out because they were genetically inferior. This was his argument. He testified before Congress about this. He traveled from state to state and testified before state legislatures. The Prudential Insurance Company made him their vice president. He became a lobbyist for this. He was an ardent opponent of Franklin Roosevelt. In fact, he crowed about how he lived long enough to see Franklin Roosevelt die. So this is this guy, Frederick Hoffman. And he's the reason, it turns out, why all this stuff is going on. You know what? Because he provided the rationale. The 20% hole in Medicare, is so that poor black people wouldn't be able to afford that 20%, so they wouldn't show up at the hospital or doctor's office where all the white people were. So you got that. So, we have this long history of racial discrimination with regard to health care. And then, during the 1980s, you had Ronald Reagan refusing to even say the word AIDS. For basically an entire decade, close friends of mine died, very dear friends of mine and Louise's, who died of AIDS during that time. And Reagan wouldn't, not only would he not fund the research, he wouldn't even mention the word. And the people around him were like, yeah, this is God's punishment for homosexuality. And now we're going after brown people. So basically what I'm saying in this op-ed is these three examples, from the early 1900s, from the mid-1900s, and now from the 2020s, these three examples are all examples of how white supremacy, male white supremacy in the United States, straight white male supremacy in the United States, has just utterly devastated people, real human beings in this country, and is continuing to, and has always been, at least for most of all of the 20th century, most of the 21st century, all of the 21st century, has always been the main focus of Republican policy.